Dear learners, today we will look at the concepts in the theory of goodness. We are all so used to branding things, actions, feelings, emotions as good or bad. Research shows that on an average, a person speaks at least 7,000 words a day. We use these words to give instructions, to analyze situations, to ask questions and to make statements. In most of our statements, we would just be stating facts. For example, India is the largest democracy in the world, or China is the most populated country in the world, etc. These are mere expressions of facts and there is no judgment made on these statements. During the course of day, we also make statements that express facts and also make judgments. For example, stealing, when we say stealing is bad or helping people in need is good, when we make such statements, we assign some judgment of good or bad to the act. So, when we make judgment, we assign value to the statements or actions. These values assigned by us may either be ethical values or they may be aesthetic values. In ethics, we are generally concerned about good and bad, whereas in aesthetics also the term good is used, but it is implied in a different sense than what we imply it in ethics. In ethics, we speak of good in terms of the right thing to do. For example, when we say that helping others is good, we are assigning some ethical value to this act of helping others. In aesthetics, good implies a sense of beauty. For example, that painting is good or this person is beautiful. So, here we assign we use the term good in a different sense, in the sense of beauty, in the sense of an aesthetic look. Now, let us come to what is meant by the term good. According to ethical naturalism, the term good is dependent on majority approval of anything. Thus, it is not the property that is being talked about, but the general attitude or the attitude of the majority towards that particular property. Hence, the ethical term good can be translated into non-ethical without changing the meaning of that term. Approval or non-approval of certain act expresses only attitudes of favorableness or unfavorableness. It is not a condition of goodness or badness, rightness or wrongness. Even if people approve certain acts as good or right, it does not follow that the right act is necessarily right, because the majority can also be mistaken. Now, coming to the different view other than ethical naturalism, there is something called the utilitarian view. According to the utilitarian view, any act is good if it promotes or tends to promote maximum happiness to the maximum number of people in the long run. The utilitarian definition has, however, some merits because it attempts to define good in terms of the consequences it produces and not on the basis of the happiness of one person, but on the happiness of many people, or on the basis of the consequences it produces in general on the people or on the society. Now, coming to another theory, that is the consequentialism or the teleological theories. These theories give good priority over the right. It is a class of normative, teleological, ethical theories that holds that consequences of one's conduct are the ultimate basis for any judgment about the rightness or wrongness of that conduct. The term good is defined as an end or the objective of human action. Here, what is the objective? The objective is greatest happiness of greatest numbers, which means that the happiness should be, the act should be such that it generates happiness, it creates happiness among large number of people, among greatest number of people. This view evaluates moral actions in terms of whether they contribute to the good. The results or consequences determine the rightness or wrongness of the action. So, whether a particular act is right or whether it is wrong, it all depends on what kind of result or what kind of consequence that particular act generates. For example, suppose that by killing a person X, an entirely innocent person, this person X is an entirely innocent person, but by letting that person die, if we can save the lives of 10 other innocent people. So, in this situation, a consequentialist would say that killing X is justified because it would result in only one person dying rather than 10 people dying. Whereas a non-consequentialist would say that it is inherently wrong to murder people and will refuse to kill X, even though not killing X leads to the death of 9 more people than killing X. So, here we see the difference between a consequentialist and a non-consequentialist. A consequentialist, as we had already discussed, considers the greater good, the happiness of the greater or larger number of people, whereas a non-consequentialist focuses only on the right thing to do. In this, the non-consequentialist does not bother or does not care whether it will be good for many people or whether it will be bad for one person. They will concentrate only on what is the right thing to do. Now, coming to the deontological theories. The deontological theories argue the priority of the right over the good. Actions are intrinsically right or wrong without any regard to consequences they happen to produce. In short, certain actions are intrinsically good or bad, right or wrong. Their goodness or badness, they do not depend on the consequences they produce. For example, if I as a person am performing my duty with sincerity, then I need not bother about the consequences. So, this is what the deontological theory says. It focuses on doing the right without giving or without bothering about what might be the consequences of that particular action. For example, the speed limit in a particular area for any motor vehicles, for cars, is 40 kilometers per hour. But now you are on your way to office and you see an injured person lying on the road who needs to be taken to the hospital. You are a kind person, you stop by to take that person to in your car, you give lift to that person in your car and you want to take that person to the hospital. But in your effort towards helping that person to reach the hospital fast, if you exceed this prescribed speed limit of 40 kilometers per hour when you cross that particular area, then according to deontological ethics, this action of yours will be wrong. So, you see how the deontological theory values what is right, or doing the right thing no matter what the consequences. Now here, if you restrict yourself to the speed of 40 kilometers per hour and the person is badly injured, the injury of that person may be aggravated, the person may lose his or her life, but according to the deontological theory, good is when you do what is right, no matter what the consequences. Now let us look at what kind of things are good. If people do not value certain things above others, then there will be no judgment about what is good or bad. We value things we like or prefer over something else. Again, there is a difference between value and preference. Something may be of value even though one does not prefer it. For example, not every student prefers to study, but studying is a valuable thing to do. So, you see how studying doing something of value is different from preferring it. Let's take another example. For example, eating green vegetables is good for children, is good for increasing their iron content, it is good for their eyes, but the children may not prefer to eat green vegetables. They may like to go for Maggi, or they may like to go for fast foods like pizzas and burgers. So, you see that there is a difference between value and preference. Now again, coming to value, value is considered in two senses: a liking or preference, and secondly, that which promotes a goal independent of one's liking or preference. Like we had already discussed, eating green vegetables is good, but you may not prefer it. So, you preferring something, when you prefer something, you add value to that thing. But you also add value to a thing irrespective of your preferences when it promotes your goal or it promotes a greater good. Another way of looking at value of things is, there are things which are valuable in themselves, and there are things which are valuable as a means to some further end. Let us look at it in more detail. Some things are valuable as a means to attainment of certain other things. That is, they are means to some ends. For example, a proper or balanced diet leads to good health. So, it is a means to attain good health. Another example is money. Money is good only as a means to some other things like material comfort, freedom from certain fears, happiness, peace, etc. But money by itself will not have any value unless it is used for attaining some other means, for attaining happiness through some other things. So, you see that some things are valuable as a means to attain some other things. Again, is everything that money can buy good? No. Thus, things may be of intrinsic value or instrumental value. Now, what is intrinsic value? Intrinsic value is the ethical thing that an object has in itself or for its own sake. An object with intrinsic value may be regarded as an end or an end in itself. For example, a good person or a good vacation or a good walk. These things are good by themselves because goodness is an intrinsic part of them. For example, a good person is good because that is that person's intrinsic value. Now, there are two different views in basing the intrinsic value. One is the subjective intrinsic value and the second one is objective intrinsic value. Now, let us look at what is subjective intrinsic value. Subjective intrinsic value means something has intrinsic value if it is valued for what it is rather than for what it can bring about. Subjective intrinsic value is created by valuers through their evaluative attitudes or judgments. It does not exist prior to or independent from these. For example, personal mementos or cultural and religious artifacts or ceremonies and rituals, accomplishments, performances, or maybe even for example historical sites, they are valued intrinsically by people for a variety of reasons. For example, personal mementos may be valuable to you because of what they represent, or maybe a historical place may be valuable to you because of its history. A scenic place may be of value to you because of its beauty, or some accomplishment or your performances on stage, etc., may be of value to you because what it embodies or what it means to you. So this is called subjective intrinsic value. Now let us look at the objective intrinsic value. Objective intrinsic value is not humanly conferred. If something has objective intrinsic value, it has properties or features in virtue of which it is valuable, independent of anyone's attitude or judgment. This is typically thought to be the case with respect to the value of persons. For example, people have value in virtue of what they are, not because others value them. Their value is not conditional. Another example is the environmental entities have intrinsic value in virtue of having a good of their own. For example, forests or trees, they have their own intrinsic value because they generate oxygen and they create a good environment. So these are objective intrinsic values which are irrespective of how another person views it or values it. Their value is because of what they are. Now let us look at the instrumental, the second type of value, that is the instrumental value or the extrinsic value. Now as we had already discussed, there are two types of values. One is the intrinsic value and the second one is the instrumental value or the extrinsic value. The instrumental value is the value of a thing which depends on how much of intrinsic value it can generate. For example, money. The instrumental value is always derivative on the value of something else. It is always conditional. Something's instrumental value fluctuates based on the changes in the desirability of the end to which it is the means and whether alternative, more efficient means are available. So the instrumental value of a particular commodity can go down if a better thing comes up. Instrumental value is substitutable, replaceable and compensatable. If something is instrumentally valuable as a means to an end, it is possible to compare it to other potential means to the same end. If a means is lost but some other equally adequate means exists, then there is no loss in the net value. For example, a fishing line has instrumental value just in case a person wants to catch fish, and its value might diminish or go down if the person has access to some more effective fish catching method or an effective fishing net. Then the instrumental value of the fishing line may go down. So the instrumental value depends on it depends on what kind of intrinsic value it can generate. For example, the fishing line can generate the intrinsic value of catching fish, but it can diminish if there is a better substitution available. Now let us look at the difference between happiness and pleasure. You've all heard both these terms multiple times. Let us look at what they mean. What is pleasure? Pleasure is a certain kind of consciousness, not verbally definable. It is a psychological state. For example, pleasure of eating, drinking, taking a walk in the morning, reading a book, contemplating works of arts, listening to music, engaging in conversation with friends, etc. These are all pleasure-giving activities. Now, pleasure may be physical or it may be mental or spiritual. Now, let us look at what is happiness. Happiness, on the other hand, consists of the sum of pleasures. A person may experience numerous pleasures without being happy, but he or she cannot be happy without experiencing pleasure from some source or the other. Sources of pleasure, of course, count much more towards happiness than do any other reasons. For example, healthy attitude towards life is more conducive to happiness than striving for wealth and glamour. So now you have seen the difference between pleasure and happiness. Let us now look at the theory of good. What is the theory of good? So far we discussed various concepts that are used or various concepts that are relevant towards the theory of good. Now let us in brief discuss about what is meant by the theory of good. In short, what is the theory of good? A complete moral theory contains both the theory of good and the theory of right. So a moral theory has two theories in it. One is the theory of good and the other one is the theory of right. The good is that which there is strongest reason to want or desire, whereas the right is that which an actor ought to do or which the actor has the strongest reason to do in the circumstances of his or her action. A theory of good speaks about what it means for a human life to be going well, or about what sorts of events and developments in their lives human beings have strongest reasons to desire or approve. For example, theories of good say that a human life goes well insofar the person living that life exercises a certain sort of deliberate control over its major directions and aims. So, if the person has control over major decisions or major aims of one's life, then that is good. In so far as life contributes to the well-being of others, if the human life contributes to the well-being of other people, then we say that human life goes well. Or in so far as it is committed to finding and abiding by mutually satisfactory ways of cooperating with others whose specific aims and projects conflict with one's own, then again human life is good. For example, if you live in a society where there is a neighbor who's with whom you have a conflict, then it goes good with human life if there is a kind of compromise or a cooperation that is attained between the two neighbors so that the goal of living a peaceful life can be achieved. Similarly, we look at the wildlife and human conflicts when the human beings try to encroach on the wildlife areas. So it goes good if there is a cooperation or if there is a compromise or if there is a thought towards how we live so that there is a peaceful coexistence. Again, in so far as it encompasses successful exercises of certain kinds of capacities, say for example friendship or leadership or artistic creation. Other theories of the good quite differently say that life goes well insofar as it is consumed with pleasant experiences or passes without pain or frustration. So this is in short what is meant by the theory of good. So let us conclude and have a quick look at what we learned today. Today we learned about the meaning of the term good. We also learned about what are the different kinds of good. We understood the concept of value. What are the different kinds of value? You have learnt about the intrinsic value and the extrinsic value or the instrumental value of things. We also learnt about the difference between what is pleasure and what is happiness. And finally, in brief, we discussed what is the theory of good, what are the different conditions which can lead to a good life. Thank you.